Welcome back from the break. And by the time we concluded the first part of this lecture, we had looked at the fact that one of the problems that face any change process is resistance. And we looked at why people may resist change. And I would like us to look at other problems that may come up with the change process. Problems of change and implications for change management. These are problems associated with the change and have indicated on the right hand the implications. So I've pointed out and discussed in detail the problem of resistance to change and why we quite often have changes being resisted. So if there is resistance, we need then to motivate people for that change. The way to deal with resistance to change is to motivate people for that change. And the second problem is how to control that change. You can set in motion a change process, and somehow in the middle you fail to control the process, and you can end up in disaster. So there is the issue, the need to control the process. So you need to manage the transition. If you are moving from A to C, and you are going through B, how do you manage the transition? You really need to manage well the transition. Otherwise, control can be a real problem in the change process. The other problem has to do with power. And you need to shape the political dynamics of change. And it is important for us to be able to attend to these. I want to look at these one by one. We have already looked at resistance, and I will not go into that in detail. But how do you, for example, address the issue of power? And how do you shape the dynamics of change? How do you address the issue of power? And there are some action steps that we need to take in order to address the need to shape the political dynamics that deals with the power. There are a number of action steps that we need to take. For example, assure the support of key power groups. Every organization has power groups and power centers. And you need to assure the support of key power groups, of those power centers. Otherwise, if they continue to exercise their power in their power centers in an incoherent way, it will become a problem in the change process. So you have a responsibility to ensure that you have these people on board. that you have these people on board. And do not ignore them. Do not ignore them. You may think someone does not matter, but they can frustrate the change that you want to implement. Everyone becomes very, very critical. Everyone becomes very, very critical. For example, in our church setup, you cannot afford to ignore the lay leaders and think maybe it will be only the bishops who have power, or you want to think that it is the canons and the reverends and the venerables, the archdeacons, and you ignore the lay leaders. But you know that the lay leaders are the ones in charge of the congregations. So do not ignore any power group in the organization. Ensure that you have the support of the key power groups. Secondly, use leader behavior to generate energy and support for the change that you want to initiate. Those power groups will have leaders. They will have leaders. Make sure that you bring them on board. Ensure that you have them on board. Those leaders will help bring on board the groups that they lead. So use leader behavior to generate energy and support for the change. Build within the system some kind of stability. Make sure that the change process is stable, and it is your work as the change agent to ensure that there is stability within the system, the process of change. So that way you will deal with the problem of power. You will deal with the problem of power. If you don't bring in those power groups, you'll have quite a difficult task in implementing your change, your desired change. And everybody matters. You must not ignore those people that you call low cadre staff, may be the key people that will enhance the change that you want to implement. So make sure that no one is left out. Make sure that no one is left out. That way you will be able to address the need for change, the problem that comes with power in the change process. So how do you address then the problem of resistance to change? I did mention that you need to motivate people for the change. That when you motivate people for the change, you will overcome the resistance. You will overcome the resistance. So how do you practically do this? One of the things you need to do in motivating people for change in order to overcome resistance is to surface dissatisfaction with the present state. Surface dissatisfaction with the present state. Ensure that the reasons for change are discussed with the groups in truth, so that you make people dissatisfied with the situation in which they are and create a desire for them for the change that you want to introduce among them. So surface dissatisfaction with the present state. Help people realize that their present state is not helping them at all, and help them to see that it is better, it is going to be better when that change is achieved. That's why I said once you have good and clear objectives, those ones will help you overcome resistance. They will help you overcome resistance. And once people are dissatisfied with their status quo, they will be willing to move on to the next stage of change. They will be able to move on to the next stage of change. But also, secondly, participate in the change. Be involved. Don't start change and then abandon it. Be involved in the change. Thirdly, reward people who are supporting the change. Reward them. People who are supporting change, if you realize there are power centers and power groups that are supporting your desired change, reward them. Reward them. Encourage them. Make it, it may not necessarily be rewards of money or anything. It just could be recognition or appreciation of their efforts and contributions. So reward them. But also give time and opportunity to disengage from the present state. Give time and opportunity to disengage from the present state. I did mention to you that change is a process. And people who have fears about that change, who are anxious about that change, who are worried that they may lose their jobs, who may not have the skills for the change, give them time and opportunity to disengage from their present state. That's why I said change is a process. You don't wake up one morning and you say you will create a change overnight. It is a process. You need to give time. Even when this university moved from Bishop Tucker Theological College to Uganda Christian University, there was a process, there was time given for members who were serving in the theological college to make adjustments and to disengage from their services and even the language of theological college, now moving to the language of university. All that requires time and opportunity. Opportunity for people to develop skills for the new change. So always take into consideration that change, in the change process, you need to give time and opportunity for people to disengage from their present state. And that way, you will be motivating people for the change, for the desired change. So you address the problem of power and address the problem of resistance to change. Then there comes the problem of control. I did mention that you need to manage the transition. You must ensure that you are in charge of the transition, that you don't set the vehicle in motion and just abandon it. You must hold on to the steering wheel. You must make sure that you are in control. And so, in the process of ensuring that you are in control of the transition and you are addressing the problem of control, develop and communicate a clear image of the future. Develop and communicate a clear image of the future. And when we are moving from Bishop Tucker to Uganda Christian University, the image was clearly painted of the benefits of becoming a university, And one of them was better salaries, better welfare. And I can bear witness that since we became a university, the staff welfare has clearly improved. It is much, 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 much better than that of Bishop Tucker Theological College. So develop and communicate a clear image of the future. And use multiple and consistent leverage points. Use multiple and consistent leverage points. Do not rely on one single group. Remember I said there are power centers, there are support groups. Do not rely on one single power group, but use all groups. Use all sections of the organization in achieving the desired change. Use multiple and consistent leverage points. Don't rely on one group. First of all, ensure that all groups have been brought in, that all the House of Bishops is convinced, that the House of Laity is convinced, that the House of Clergy is convinced in our church structures. Ensure, if you are at a local parish, that the Mothers' Union is convinced. All these, the youth, the youth and the boys brigade, the Fathers' Union. Ensure that the elders in the church, in the parish, are in support of the change that you want, desire to introduce. And so in the process, develop organizational arrangements for the transition. Develop organizational arrangements for the transition. And of course, building feedback mechanisms. Building feedback mechanisms. Have an open ear, an ear on the ground, some people put it, so that you can always get feedback about the change process. And be open to both the positive feedback and also the negative feedback. And you know, in the monitoring of the change, you continue to make adjustments along the way of the change process. But that will happen if you have built-in feedback mechanisms. Be willing to listen. Be willing to listen, because there will be views that will help you to modify, to build up that change by making adjustments and improvements within the change process. So friends, let us not think of change, but think through change and plan for it properly. Because change is inevitable, change is a fact of life, and whether you fight it or not, change will happen anyway. You will grow old, you will retire, and all those changes need to be planned for properly. You will get married, you will have a home, you have to prepare and plan for all those changes. And I'm saying, don't just shout, I want to get married. Plan for it, think about it, think through it. Think through it, have clear objectives, have clear strategies, have an implementation plan for the change, for your desired change, and also be able to monitor and evaluate the change that you want to have. I know that there are many things that we want and desire to change in our Church of Uganda, but may I plead with you, not just to shout, I want this change, but think through it carefully. Think through it carefully. One of the things that I'm advocating for in our Anglican Church of Uganda is giving Holy Communion to children, to change from only giving Holy Communion to confirmed people, to giving it to all members of God's family who are baptized, because that is the initiation sacrament. but I've thought through this change and even written a book about it. And I've been sharing and talking to the people, to the stakeholders. The first main stakeholder, of course, was the House of Bishops. And in 2018, in the month of May, I did get an opportunity to speak to the House of Bishops about this desired change, which I'm very passionate about. I'm praying for it, and I'm very committed to it prayerfully. It is not something that needs to be rushed. Never rush any change, because it will not work. It will create more problems than the desired benefits that you want to have. And I'm willing to be patient and to work at this change patiently, to allow people understand the need for change and the benefits of that change, to be able to appreciate the objectives, to be able that it is something that will contribute to church growth and to the stability of our Christians in our church, and to our spiritual nurture and growth as believers. So do not only advocate for change, please always think through the particular change that you want introduced. Thank you so much for your attention, and may God bless you. I'm going to be giving you an exercise, and I hope that that exercise you will be able to attend to it. I want you to think of a particular issue of concern to you that you would want changed, and take that particular issue through a change process, as we have shared up to the conclusion. And if we are going to do the examinations under lockdown, and we have to do those examinations as take-home exams, that is going to be one of the take-home exam questions. So I'm going to give you that question and give you that process. And if we give take-home exams, it is going to be part of your examinations, and I'll ask you to do it ahead of time. So please think through an issue that is related to our church, that is related to the Anglican Church of Uganda. Think through it. Or it might be local in your parish, it might be local in your home diocese, and it can be at the church national level as the Church of Uganda, and take it through the change process. I'm going to send you the guidelines for that exercise, and I hope that you can attend to it and do it very effectively, because it will account towards your course, this course in the final assessment. So may God bless you, and thank you for your attention. To God be the glory.